My name is Tom Timbrooks. I am running for the House of Representatives, U.S. House of Representatives, that's Washington, D.C., for Oregon District 6. And so I've been using this platform to just let everybody in Oregon District 6 and, well, throughout Oregon know about me, about what kinds of things that I will bring to the table if you send me to Washington, D.C. So let's get to my slides real quick. I'm going to go ahead and start on the side here. So yeah, in-person voting. Okay, so there is a bill that is SB 210 that is being considered in the Oregon State Legislature. Now, what this is, it's a bill that is going to make in-person voting the default form of voting in Oregon. And I do support this, and it's not just for philosophical. I'll get on with this. There's actually some very hard science that we have to discuss when dealing with in-person voting as opposed to mail-in voting. So let me go ahead and we'll talk about this. So, coffee, good stuff. It's going to make in-person voting on Election Day the standard method, allowing absentee voting only in limited situations. And that's kind of an important thing. I'll get on with that later. It's going to require valid government-issued ID for in-person voting and mail-in ballot requests, and that's a good thing. It's going to ensure all ballots are returned by Election Day, no late counting, and state-paid postage for mail-in ballots, and refer the act to the people for approval at the next general election. Okay, now these things are very important, and well, I went ahead and did some research to see which is better, mail-in or in-person voting, and as it turns out, each of them has advantages, each of them has disadvantages. And I want to go over the advantages and disadvantages of each really quick. Let me get on with that. Okay, so in-person voting, what are the advantages? Well, security. Security is an extremely important thing when you're dealing with government leadership, especially when you're dealing with the executive branch. Who the president is, that's something that's very important. We don't want any possibility of any kind of fraud coming up when we're talking about voting for the President of the United States or the governor, the House of Representatives. Now, for smaller items like, I don't know, school board or, minor taxes issues or something, then yeah, mail-in ballots, that would be acceptable. But for actual, overall leadership, we really have to consider security to be a very, very important thing. And so showing up to vote, voting in person, that really helps with security, okay? So in-person voting requires ID verification, and that's something that some states are going against. Like in California, it's actually, it's not required. You can just show up and tell people who you are. You don't have to show an ID apparently, and I cannot agree with that. You have to be physically present, registration, cross-checking. It's going to make it harder for individuals to cast multiple votes or impersonate others. Now, I know that like if you get on the Daily Show or news shows or something like that, they say it's really not that big of a deal and you can't really prove it. Well, we want, it's just like a bicycle lock. Nobody is going to steal your bicycle until somebody steals your bicycle. And then you think, wow, why didn't I lock it up? So nobody is going to cheat in an election until we find out that somebody cheated in an election. And then we're going to say, hey, why didn't we have in-person voting this whole time? So really, yeah, we have to worry about these things before they become a problem, because it's a little bit too late after they become a problem. So chain of custody. The ballots are cast and stored under direct supervision, minimizing the risks of tampering or loss compared to mail-in ballots. And that, it's like, again, it's not going to be a huge thing. People, comedians on the Daily Show and like that, and, Jimmy Kimmel and like these people, they're all going to make fun of it. They're going to say, oh, there's no proof, that blah, blah, blah. But it's their job to be comedians. It's their jobs to be skeptical. It's their jobs to make jokes about these things. Elections are not a joking matter. Elections are one of the most important things that any American citizen can do. All right, so we have to remember we're above, when you're casting your ballot, when you're voting for somebody, you're above the level of talk show host comedians. You're above the comedians on the Daily Show who just basically they just read off of a script. Okay, you have to put yourself in a higher position, a higher authority. You have to say, look, in-person voting is the most secure. I want to do in-person voting because it secures the election and makes sure everything happens the way it's supposed to happen. Okay, so. Builds a public trust in the system, so visible integrity. Voters see the process firsthand, showing ID, casting the vote, sealing the ballot boxes. Transparency helps reinforce the legitimacy of election outcomes. And there is a certain confidence factor you have when you see your ballot go in the ballot box and it's that it's counted and everything. So that does lend to security and just a feeling of confidence that what you want to happen is happening. Okay, instant validation. That's what I was just saying. In-person system can alert voters to mistakes. Immediately allowing corrections on the spot. And that's a very important thing also, because with your mail-in ballots, of course, you're going to have the opportunity. Oh, hey, I messed this up. I marked something I shouldn't have marked. I used a pencil instead of a pen. What do I do? Well, I'll just throw it away and I won't vote this year. So you don't want that. You want representation. That's what America's all about. Okay. So what else do we have here? Reduce administrative errors, and that is correct. The fewer rejected ballots that, if the ballots are correct, as soon as you mark it and hand it in, then there's going to be fewer problems with it. And it's a standardized process. I mean, it's going to go across every state. And I mean, there's really no mistaking this process. The standardization of the process, it's just common sense right out there in front of you. It's something you and I, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to understand the process of voting, putting a ballot into the box. Okay, so there you have that. Now, civic and ritual engagement. This is what I was just talking about a little while ago. This voting is the most important thing that any American citizen can do. And so knowing that you vote, going to the ballot box, standing in line to vote, this is a sacrifice that all Americans have to make in order to know for a fact that their ballot is being counted the way they want it to be. Their vote is being counted the way they want it to be counted. It is a civic duty, just like stopping at a stoplight, just like doing anything else, feeding your children, making sure they don't grow up to be criminals. It's just like any other civic duty. This is one that it requires some element of sacrifice. But I mean, if you know that your vote is counting, then for me, I've voted in every election I could possibly vote in since the age of 18. I have stood in lines, I've stood in the rain, I have driven miles, done everything possible. Voting is one thing that I absolutely will never give up. I want to vote, and I want in-person voting because I want to know that I am being seen doing my civic responsibility, that I'm civically aware, that people see me doing what I'm supposed to be doing. Okay? It helps marginalized voices, and this is a very important thing. You have when I was living in Texas, I had opportunity. I was at a DMV. In Texas, most DMV people are required to have skills, understand Spanish. Every DMV place is required to have somebody who speaks Spanish in Texas. Well, I was in line. I went up to this one DMV person, and she was a Spanish-speaking, but she was speaking English with me. Right beside me, there was an English-only DMV employee, and a man walked up to him, an older man, probably about 75, 80 years old, and he needed to talk with this guy, but this guy, he could only speak Spanish. And this guy was just, he was just really, really upset about the whole thing, where it's like, oh, Spanish, I don't care about that. Well, I had this female DMV person. I told him, Senor, por favor, come over here, directed him over. I had this person take care of the Mexican man who only spoke Spanish. I waited for it to be taken care of. I didn't mind waiting. I wanted to make sure, I mean, it was kind of embarrassing to me that the guy who only spoke English was getting upset about this man who's like 75, 80 years old. He only spoke Spanish. Yeah, I mean, to me, I think it's more embarrassing that our government is allowing tax-paying citizens of the United States to be marginalized. Just because this guy doesn't speak English, that doesn't mean that you can chase him off, that you can give him substandard service. And with the voting, with the elections thing, there are some people out there who do not understand the ballot, or they're afraid to vote the way they want to. Getting them out of the house, getting them into a safe environment where they can be brought to understand the ballot, what the ballot says, what is this referendum, what is this tax, what do these things, they can ask the experts right there. If you have some person like this 75, 80-year-old gentleman, doesn't really understand the language, doesn't really what might be the consequence of voting for this action, you can't really expect that person to vote in home, to cast a knowledgeable vote. That person has to be brought out, and that person who could potentially be marginalized has to be brought into a place where that person is made to understand the value of this particular piece of legislation, of this vote. And so that is just an incredibly important thing in the American system of democracy. Our constitutional republic requires equal understanding, equal representation. And I don't care what language you speak. If you don't speak English, if you have some kind of confusion about any kind of election issue, you should be able to discuss that with somebody. And voting in person allows that to happen. So it reduces the potential for marginalized citizens to vote in a way that is against their needs. Okay, so voting in person on that, very important. Okay? And it gives a private environment, of course, and this is something that I've been covering for a couple of minutes here. You don't have any bullies, any bad guys, any criminals that are pointing guns at your head telling you to vote a certain way. When Al Capone was in charge of Chicago, there was an election. They were going to have a police chief that was going to be extremely tough on organized crime. This guy wanted to get rid of Al Capone and his organized crime. Well, Al Capone actually sent thugs out to all the voting places. And these thugs would actually go up and look at a person and see what way they voted and say, no, you're not going to vote that way. Okay? I mean, these people would actually say, oh, I know your family. I know you. I know your kids. You're going to vote for this guy and not this guy, right? That kind of environment cannot exist in a free election. If that happens, so mail-in ballots, I mean, if you're going to mail in your ballot, who knows what kind of environment the person casting, it might not even be the person that it was mailed to. I mean, this person could be incapacitated, could be in a coma someplace, but still gets a mail-in ballot. So whoever gets the mail-in ballot fills it out, signs it, and sends it in. So, I mean, these people, in order to have a fair election, we have to make sure that any person who is casting a vote is not put under any duress of any kind. That vote counts in that way because that person wants that to happen. End of story. Okay? So, that goes with that. Now, for mail-in voting, the convenience of mail-in voting, it is fantastically convenient. We get a piece of mail, we fill out this piece of mail, and we turn it in. Another terrific advantage, higher turnout. I mean, there are people who can't stand in line to cast their vote. The people who can't stand in line to cast their vote, they're allowed to vote this way. So, yeah, much higher turnout. You get a much bigger representation. The whole population. The whole population can just fill out this form and send it in. It's very convenient. You get a higher turnout. So, yeah, there are advantages there. Okay. Improved accessibility, I mean, that just goes with it because it comes directly to your house. And if you're immobilized, if you're in a wheelchair, and you can't make it to the voting, if you're in a hospital bed and you're suffering from COVID, you're in a coma, or not in a coma, you're suffering from COVID in a hospital bed, you're getting better, you're still alive, you have the right to vote, you fill out your little voting slip and say, hey, I may not be able to make it to the voting booth, but I can still vote. And that's a fantastic thing. It's a great thing, so I applaud that for it. Okay. Rural and remote areas. There are parts of Oregon and every state that in November covered with mud, snow, rain. If these people cannot leave their house to go vote, their votes go uncounted. They do not get represented by the people in the next election. So this is kind of important for people in rural conditions that can't make it in to vote at exactly the right time. So that is a good thing for mail-in voting. More time with the ballot. And this is actually a very important, a very good thing, because if you're looking at something, and like I said before, if you don't completely understand something, you get the voters' information pamphlet sent out by the state, and you read and say, okay, a yes vote means this, a no vote means this, and it's made perfectly clear. You have all the time in the world to decide what direction you want to vote, what you're supporting, what you're not supporting. You can discuss it with your family members. You can go to the coffee shop and discuss it with whomever else might be voting. So this is actually a very good thing. It's a wonderful thing, and it's one of the reasons I would support mail-in voting, for this reason. It's a terrific thing. It helps for educated voters. Okay, so reducing of errors. Many jurisdictions allow voters to track their mail-in ballot and correct errors. So this is something that could be a good thing. Also, it's there are certain conveniences to mail-in voting. They're terrific conveniences. That's why the people of Oregon approved it. There was just a lot of convenience in there. Right now, we're thinking maybe mail-in ballots might not be such a terrific thing. Let's look over the whole situation again. Okay, so lower staffing needs, that's a fact. You don't need a whole lot of people to man any kind of voting booths if none exist. So it costs a lot less to have mail-in ballots than it does for vote in person ballots. So there you go, streamlining of the process. It's a very streamlined, very efficient, cost efficient, time efficient. It is a terrifically efficient process, very streamlined, and it's really a great process. So, like I said, on the surface, it sounds like a great idea. So, what else do we got? The auditability, the mail-in ballots leave a paper trail, so you have the same paper trail with mail-in ballots as you do just a regular ballot. So, there's that. The paper trail is the same, so you can audit these the same way. So there are some serious advantages to doing flexibility during emergencies, like I said with the COVID thing. If people are sick and they still want to vote, there you go. It's flexibility during emergencies. So each system has the trade-offs. Mail-in voting makes voting easier, but introduces logistical challenges, verifying signatures, managing delivery times. In-person voting strengthens the election control and may discourage voters due to inconvenience. And for me, basically, what you're doing is you are trading security for convenience, and you have to wonder, okay, which is more important in our election? Is it security or is it convenience? If it's a major thing, if it's a presidential election, if it's a gubernatorial election, you're voting for a sheriff, you're voting for a state representative, senator, something like that, I would say in-person voting is the way to go. But if it's a minor referendum, a tax, or something of that nature, I would say mail-in voting would be fine. So if we could have some kind of compromise where we aren't sacrificing security for convenience, I think that would be the way to go. Now, there are some technological reasons that I wanted to go over for in-person voting. I've told you this before. I am, in my professional life, what I do for a living, I'm a manufacturing engineer. I work in the semiconductor industry, but manufacturing is manufacturing. I've also worked in aerospace and automotive. It's manufacturing. Manufacturing is manufacturing wherever you go. There's all kinds of things you have to. But there are technological issues that I kind of wanted to talk about. And one of them is something called a PLC, which is a programmable logic controller. It's essentially, it's a computer. Okay, it's a computer that you use instead of using the computer that you have, all right? Now, you've all used your desktop computer, your laptop computer, and you'll have 2 or 3 programs running. In any kind of environment, any kind of manufacturing environment, you're going to have 50, 60, maybe 100, maybe 1,000 machines working all at the same time. You cannot have one computer running 1,000 machines. Okay, so what we do in the manufacturing environment, we take something called a PLC, a programmable logic controller, and that's this slide right here, PLC system. Programmable logic controller, and you see the programming device there at the bottom. You have the central processing unit on the PLC, the memory, and so forth. Basically, it's an autonomous computer that you program to do whatever kind of manufacturing tasks that you have necessary. You have a machine, and instead of your one laptop or desktop computer running that machine, you have a PLC, a programmable logic controller, running that machine. So if you have 1,000 machines in your manufacturing environment, you have 1,000 PLCs, okay? Well, the PLC is also used in, this is an example of a PLC. I'm sure many of you have seen them. You probably just didn't know what you were looking at, okay? So PLCs aren't just used in manufacturing environments. PLCs are used in traffic environments. The traffic lights that monitor or manage traffic all over America, all over the world, they have at their heart a programmable logic controller. Okay, that's these little gray boxes that you see. Every street corner that has traffic lights has this little gray box, and this little gray box has in it a programmable logic controller. And that programmable logic controller is programmed to operate the traffic lights in a specific way. All right, now the ballot box also has these PLCs. Okay, and here you have this ballot box. You're putting a ballot into the ballot box, and it is reading the results of whatever the ballot is. Okay, so yeah, let me get off of this for a minute. That slide's going to tell me something else. These programmable logic controllers are made by a lot of different companies all over the planet, but most of them are manufactured in China. Okay, pretty much everything is manufactured in China. I mean, if you take the amount of manufacturing done in China and you pile it up right here, and the amount of manufacturing done in Europe, the United States, Japan, and India, and all the other places in the world, what you'll find is China is this much and everybody else is this much. So China has more than half of the manufacturing in the world, and it's just because they can do it much, much cheaper. Okay? But there is a sacrifice for this. A PLC programmable logic controller is programmable. It uses a kind of logic called ladder logic. It's not Windows, it's not any other computer. It's a very old computer programming language, been around for a very long time. Now, these programmable logic controllers were what were controlling the centrifuges in Iran. Iran had a nuclear fuel program. They were trying to make an atomic bomb, and one of the things they have to do is operate these centrifuges, and the centrifuges separate the uranium. I don't know exactly what they do, but the centrifuges had to run at a specific speed. A virus called Stuxnet that was created by somebody infected all of these PLCs and caused the PLCs to run in a way that they weren't supposed to run. So eventually the whole manufacturing line for the Iranian manufacturing line broke down. So this one virus was able to stop all of the uranium manufacturing in Iran for a period of time. That virus is still out there. You can go on the dark web and you can purchase a copy of Stuxnet, and you can alter Stuxnet to meet your needs. This virus, if your PLC is made in China, China could take this virus and put it onto the PLC that is sold to America. America could take this PLC that made in China and install it into a traffic PLC, a traffic controller. Okay? What that means is that at any time, China could shut down America's infrastructure, all of our infrastructure, everything. They could decide who wins the election. These PLCs that are manufactured in China and are put into our little machines that count tabulate the votes that are mailed in, China could take control of those, and not complete control. What China could do potentially is say that one vote for this person is going to count as 1.1 votes. One vote for this person is going to count as 0.9 votes. So if 10 people vote for this person, that person gets 9 votes. If 10 people vote for this person, that person gets 11 votes. So China could potentially have some kind of backdoor software, some kind of malware put on these PLCs that go into our voting machines that could help China to determine an American election. Now, this is not the kind of thing that could happen if you use voting in person to do this. So that's another reason, a technological reason why voting in person is better than mail-in voting. Voting in person removes from the loop any possibility that the election results could be altered through malware or some kind of backdoor software that's put into these PLCs. And this is the reason I say the United States is good in creating these tariffs that prevent so much Chinese stuff, so much stuff being manufactured in China. It's not just about price. These PLCs that control the world's infrastructure could potentially be used to destroy an enemy without even firing a single shot. China could potentially disrupt America's infrastructure completely with just a flick of a switch. I mean, picture this. Every traffic light in America turns green for an hour. Every traffic light in America is green for 1 hour because China decided so. How many millions of people would die in all the traffic accidents? You'd have cars just driving through every intersection at 45, 50, 60 miles an hour. They'd slam into each other, and we would just have bodies piling up by the millions all across America. Then we'd have to figure that out. And then we would say, okay, well, we have to get new PLCs because these ones have viruses. Where are we going to get these PLCs if they're not manufactured in America? The Chinese are just going to give us more PLCs that already have their malware and their backdoor software in there. What can we do? We have to use their stuff because we can't manufacture it ourselves, right? So these are the kinds of things that should be manufactured in America because of that. Now let me get back to my slides here. Okay, yeah, and it's not just the PLCs because as a manufacturing engineer, I can tell you we have millions of these PLCs in every aspect of manufacturing. And it's not just the microprocessors, it's not just the cars, it's the missiles that go onto the airplanes that defend America. The PLCs that go onto aircraft carriers or ships. China could shut down America's fleet. China could shut down America's Navy with just the flick of a switch. If a Chinese submarine came up to an American aircraft carrier, the American aircraft carrier, the whole fleet, the whole support fleet for that aircraft carrier would say, okay, there's a Chinese submarine right there. We know it's there. Let's get into defense mode. And then China just kind of pushes a button and every ship just shuts down. All of the PLCs just stop. Everything on every ship stops. They can't do anything about it. So the Chinese submarine just torpedo, rocket. An entire fleet of ships could be destroyed at the bottom of the ocean. We couldn't do anything about it. So these are items, these are things that need to be manufactured in America. And that's why I support the tariffs that are coming through with Donald Trump. Okay, so it's not just the election, it's America's whole infrastructure that depends on these devices that are manufactured in China. It's not just PLCs, it just talked about that. SCADA, supervisory control and data acquisition. These are things that they're all over the place also. You've seen them. You just don't know what you're looking at. And if they're compromised, hostile actors could issue false commands or hide dangerous conditions. And this is like a nuclear power plant. What if at all of our nuclear power plants, the SCADA systems just stop functioning. We could have meltdowns at every nuclear power plant in the world. What are we going to do about it? Nothing, because everything we have is made in China. Distributed power control systems, oil refineries, chemical plants, power stations, automated, all these things, they could be sacrificed at a moment's notice if a hostile country. Look, we're coming to very close to war with China over Taiwan. And what are we going to do about it if China decides to shut down not just our infrastructure, but Japan's, Taiwan's, Europe's, everybody's? China could potentially hold the entire world at bay. So I mean, these are things that need to be looked at whenever, not just for elections, but once we get this figured out, let's start making these things in America again, so that we can assure security protocols are being observed. Remote terminal units. And these are sensors for remote locate pipelines, substations, like I just said. Human-machine interfaces. And these are things for interacting with control systems. You go to a gas station, you get your gas or whatever. These things are what are controlling your ability to put gas in your car. So what if they stop working? You can't leave the house. You can't leave your town. If you do leave your town, you're not going to make it back, because you're going to need gas in your tank to make it back from wherever you went, right? So we really need to look into that as a real issue. And that's why these tariffs, I applaud these tariffs, because American manufacturing assures American safety. Variable frequency drives, motors, pumps, fans, things like that, very important. And like I said, your Navy, the American Navy uses these things all the time. If they're shut down, you've got a ship that could just potentially capsize. I don't know if you've ever seen, okay, you got this aircraft carrier, the bottom's like this and the top is like this. The way this aircraft carrier actually stays stable, you have water pumps that are pushing ballast through these water lines all the time. At any time you have an airplane that gets taken from here over to here, you have ballast that's adjusted down here. That's how the aircraft carrier stays afloat. If you turn these off, that aircraft carrier is just going to sink. It's not going to be able to stay afloat. It's physically impossible. Okay, so yeah, that's what I'm talking about there. Also, that's what your variable frequency drives. Servo controllers, motion controllers. Malware could distort the tolerances, cause kinetic malfunctions, and this is your machine shops and so forth. These places, I mean, you're going to have problems getting any manufacturing done if we go to war against China. Industrial sensors, intelligent electronic devices, all of these things could be shut down if we have any problems with China. There's nothing we'd be able to do about it. Network gateways, industrial routers, smart meters, FPGAs, all these guys. And I want to get to the HVAC control. What is HVAC? HVAC is the way air is routed through buildings. It's also the way air is routed through submarines, through ships, airport terminals. The way we assure fresh air gets to all of these crowded places where people need the fresh air is HVAC. If a hostile country were to take control of America's HVAC, you could be looking at people in hotels, in high-rise buildings, in trains, on airplanes, ships, throughout our Navy, throughout our military, all losing that fresh air. And if they lose the fresh air, the carbon dioxide is going to build up, and it could potentially suffocate and kill a lot of American people, not just service people, but people in hotels, people in tunnels, people on airplanes and ships all over the place. So this is a potentially bad situation that we have. So it's not just the election thing. Of course, the election thing is a big part of it, but I mean, there's a lot of American infrastructure that depends on stuff that comes from China that could potentially be controlled by China and ultimately cause the shutdown of America's infrastructure completely. It could set us back into the dark ages. So support the tariffs that Donald Trump is creating, because these tariffs are going to protect American infrastructure from Chinese hostilities. Okay. So yeah, automatic tank gauging systems. So the list is going on there. Okay. So yeah, that's what I wanted to cover about that. When you're talking about convenience is a wonderful thing. We all want it, everything we do to be as convenient as possible, but we still want to have some security in there. And having all of our PLCs and all of our electronic devices made in China, that's very convenient, it's very inexpensive, and it cuts down on building costs and maintenance costs and so forth. But ultimately, it takes away a margin of safety. And we really want that margin of safety in America. So yeah, let's keep those tariffs going. Let's get manufacturing back into America, especially with these controlling items. Now, there's another thing I wanted to discuss here, and one thing I want to do. Democrats, something I've noticed about Democrats, and once again, I have nothing against Democrats. We need Democrats. They're terrific people. I don't want the Democratic Party to be outlawed or go away or lose any seats in the House. I like it where it's at. But Democrats have adopted this phrase, progressive. We're the Democrats. We're progressive. Okay? I want to reclaim that for the Republican Party, because I think Republicans are more progressive than Democrats. I think we should say the Progressive Republican Party. And okay, I've got some slides here that I'm going to show you to kind of help that, okay? What is it? Okay, socialism, the economic, oh, yeah. One of the reasons that Democrats talk about themselves as being progressive is they talk about socialism. They support socialism, socialist ideologies, socialist things. What they are supporting isn't actually socialism. What they are supporting is social programs. And I agree, certain programs should be socialized. Education, that's a terrific thing to socialize. We should have socialized education. That would be a great social program. Fire departments, police departments, things like that. Things that everybody depends on that you probably will never need, but it's a good insurance policy to have, okay? But the problem with Democrats and these progressive Democrats is that they conflate socialism with social programs, okay? So here's where I'm going. Socialism is an economic and political system where the means of production are owned and controlled collectively by the state. Okay, the goal is to eliminate private ownership. That is socialism. Well, social programs are just government-funded services, healthcare, education, unemployment, pensions. Those are things that they can be social programs. That's not socialism. It is a social program. And whenever we talk about different countries being socialist, we're not talking about them actually being socialist. They aren't socialist. They just have social programs. Okay, and so the confusion comes from socialism and social programs deal with redistribution and welfare, and people are conflated also. So or people they conflate the two. So in reality, you can have extensive social programs without being socialist. So this is one of the things that that the people that call themselves progressive, they want to encourage is social programs and socialism because they conflate the two. You'll hear the women on The View, the ladies on The View talking about how socialism works, and as evidence to socialism working, look at Scandinavia. Well, the Scandinavian people, the government will tell you they aren't socialist. They have extensive social programs and a very high level of taxes, but they have free enterprise. Free enterprise is not socialism. Socialist programs, socialized programs are not socialism either. They are a free enterprise-oriented economy with social programs. That's what they have there, okay? So examples of conflation: Medicare is socialism, public health care program, abolition of private health care or markets. See, socialism would be the abolition of private health care markets. Social programs are the opposite of that. So when politicians refer to countries like Sweden or Norway as socialist, they overlook that these countries have thriving capitalist economies with strong social safety nets. That's what they're talking about there. And these are countries that aren't actually socialist, but they do get confused with socialism because they have extensive social programs. Sweden, Norway, Denmark, Finland, Canada, Germany. None of them are socialist economies. All of them have very strong social programs. Okay, so don't confuse socialism with social programs, and don't confuse socialism with progressive. Socialism is not progressive. Social programs are not really progressive programs. They're just government welfare during a time where people need it. The reason it matters, mislabeling policies. Like I said, you could say something is socialist when it's actually a capitalist thing. It's just a welfare thing, okay? Dismissing social programs. Okay. Politicized fear-mongering, these things. So, yeah, if we do this, we'll become Venezuela. We won't become Venezuela if we have certain social programs. Venezuela is socialist. Socialism, a socialist economy leads to a fascist dictatorship type of government. Having social programs does not make you socialist. And this is one of the problems that calling social programs socialism create. We don't want, in America, we don't want to be socialist. We may want social programs, but we don't want socialism. Okay? And conflating the two things, it causes problems when we want legislation that is good, that is helpful. If we call it socialism when it's really just a socialized idea, socialized policy, that could prevent it from actually passing. That could prevent people that need help from getting the help that they need. So we can't call socialism progressive. And we also shouldn't call socialized programs progressive. It's just the government helping people out when people need help. That's one of the reasons that the government exists, is to accomplish collectively that which can't be accomplished by the individual. And in this case, it's in the preamble of the Constitution: provide for the common, promote the general welfare. Okay, so promote the general welfare is one of the parts of the preamble. This is what social programs do, not socialism, social programs. Okay, so don't conflate the two. Socialism changes the structure of ownership. Social programs are just policy tools used within capitalism to ensure some level of fairness and security. Okay, so now, like I said, we're going to revisit the Constitution here. The preamble says, we, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. These are not partisan ideals, they are national ones, universal aspirations meant to guide every generation. And if we examine them honestly, it becomes clear today it's the Republican Party that is most vigorously pursuing these ends, while the Democratic Party undermines them. Let's go with the first one, to form a more perfect union. What is the union? The Union of the United States of America, all of us together, all 50 states, all 350 million people, okay? What does that mean? Well, Republican governors, Ron DeSantis, Greg Abbott, have asserted states' rights by resisting federal mandates on everything from COVID-19 restrictions to school curriculum, strengthening federalism and promoting unity through decentralization and accountable governance. Now, what the Democrats have pursued is expansive federal mandates, from the Affordable Care Act to climate-related executive actions that override local control and impose a one-size-fits-all approach. Meanwhile, divisive identity politics have fragmented Americans into categories rather than uniting us as citizens. And this happens all the time. Democrats, they will say, are you a Republican or are you one of the good guys? Okay, the LGBT thing, students versus other people in America who aren't. The Democrats will say, well, if you're not a Democrat, you're uneducated, you're ignorant, you're stupid, and so forth. These are things that the Democrats are doing to take us away from unity. Now, I'm never going to say Democrats are overeducated or anything like that. I'm going to say Democrats are people who have the same goals as any American does. They just have a different way of going about them. And between conservatives and liberals, Republicans and Democrats, there's a compromise somewhere in the middle. We have to meet that compromise. That's how we create a more perfect union. Republicans want it, Democrats don't. Okay, so I want to take back the term of progressive. I want to bring it to the Republican Party. Establishing justice. GOP leadership, that's the Republicans, grand old party, GOP, has prioritized the appointment of originalist judges and passed the First Step Act, a bipartisan effort to reform sentencing and reduce recidivism for nonviolent offenders. Democratic-led cities have implemented soft on-crime policies, including reduced penalties for theft and drug offenses, resulting in rising crime and reduced accountability. Incentives rooted in equality rather than equity rather than equality under the law have led to outcomes that favor some groups over others, undermining the principle of blind justice. Now, establishing justice means justice for everybody. If we do not criminalize criminal behavior, then people are going to choose criminal behavior over good behavior. Okay, I mean, it's much easier to be a criminal, and it's much easier to fall in with a criminal element than it is to fall in with a non-criminal element. I mean, who wants to spend countless hours in school learning about calculus, computer programming, biology, history, and all that stuff, when all you have to do is steal a bunch of money and live like a king? Who's going to do that? It's always going to be something people will do to avoid responsibility. So we have to encourage people to be responsible, good citizens, and create a system of justice that promotes the ideals that being a good civic citizen, being a good citizen is a positive thing. So that's establishing justice. The Republicans do it, the Democrats don't. So, that's another thing. So ensure domestic tranquility. Well, back the Blue Act. That's what Republican initiatives, increase funding and training for police, helping restore order in cities facing lawlessness. This is a very important thing because one aspect of the American dream is owning your own business. People come from other countries to America so that they can own their own business. If they can't own their own business because the criminals have taken over the streets, there goes the American dream. And we want people to come to America so that they can enjoy the domestic tranquility that we've created. Now, in contrast, the Democratic Party have had the defund police movement. Some cities reducing law enforcement budgets, leading to spikes in crime and unrest. Cities like Portland, San Francisco, and under Democratic have struggled to control riots and mass theft, eroding public trust and security. That is not ensuring domestic tranquility. The Republicans want to do it. The Democrats want to avoid it. Republicans are progressive. Provide for the common defense. Well, the Republicans have backed robust military funding and defended America's southern border through Remain in Mexico, expanded border wall efforts, and resistance to catch and release immigration policies. So the Democrats have pushed forward defense budget cuts while promoting lax immigration policies and calls to abolish ICE. This compromises border security and national sovereignty. So how can we have a common defense under the circumstances that the Democrats have created? This is not progressive. This is regressive. The Democrats do not exhibit progressive characteristics here. The Republicans do exhibit progressive characteristics here. The Republicans are progressive, the Democrats are not. The Democrats are just calling themselves progressives. They aren't progressive, they're regressive. So what else? Promote the general welfare. Let me see. Best promoted through opportunity, economic freedom, and self-reliance, not dependency on the state. In 2017, the tax cuts and job expert job growth and wage increase, while Republican-led states have championed school choice to give families more control over their children's education. Democrats have pursued massive entitlement expansion, student loan forgiveness, universal basic income pilots that risk creating long-term dependency. While meanwhile, excessive spending through legislation like the American Rescue Plan has fueled inflation, harming the very people those programs aim to help. This is not promoting the general welfare. The Republicans promote the general welfare, the Democrats do not. Republicans are progressive. The Democrats are not progressive. Secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. Republican lawmakers defend free speech, religious liberty, and the Second Amendment, and push back against censorship by big tech. They also fight to rein in reckless spending that mortgages our future, and that is a very big part. $35 trillion. America owes $35 trillion to somebody else. When my generation dies, the next generation is going to have that debt. This is not securing the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. This is giving them an unpayable debt. And that is not progressive. Okay, so the Democrats have supported policies that critics say infringe on free expression, particularly through support of online censorship and cancel culture. Cancel culture is a big one. Gun control proposals have sought to restrict the Second Amendment, and unprecedented government spending threatens to burden further generations with unsustainable debt. So, Republicans, progressive, Democrats not. It's time to reclaim the word progressive. Progressive does not mean moving away from the Constitution. It means moving towards its realization. It means applying eternal principles to modern challenges with courage, clarity, and conviction. If that is progressive, then the Republican Party is, in every meaningful sense, the truly progressive party of our time. So if you want to be progressive, vote Republican. If you want to be regressive, vote Democrat. Okay? Now, I've got, like I said, I've got nothing against Democrats as a whole. They have an agenda. And real Democrats, the real Democrats that I respect, are people who understand it's not about emotional issues, it's about logical, real issues, substantial things. Republicans want less government. Democrats want more government. Okay, we can compromise. Republicans want local authority. Democrats want central authority. We can compromise. Some people want mail-in voting. Other people want in-person voting. We can compromise. That's what America's constitutional republic is built on, the art of compromise. In a republic, in a democracy, 49% of the people are always getting left, holding the bag. They're unsatisfied. In a republic, the majority of the people, like 90%, more than 90%, get representation, and the compromise tries to satisfy everybody. So our American constitutional republic, based on democratic principles, is all about trying to make as many people happy as possible. And those are progressive principles. Right now, the Republican Party shows more progressive principles than the Democratic Party, but that's not because the Democrats are bad. It's because they've been sidetracked. They have been told that they've been given some kind of marketing ploy to make them believe that these principles over here are progressive and what they're doing now is progressive when it really isn't. They're just being misled. They're being sidetracked. The Republican Party has to really get in and help the Democratic Party to save them from these marketing ploys that they're falling for. So really, let's understand what the meaning of progressive is, and that the Republican Party right now shows more progressive ideals than the Democratic Party. So I want to bring the word progressive back to the Republican Party. We do it, they don't. If you can bear with me, it's been a little bit more than an hour. See what else I got here. Oh, that was it then. Okay, I'm going back to that. All right, so that was really it. And the key points that I want to go back over are these. Chinese manufacturing has created a situation in America where they could potentially control the outcome of our elections, and they could potentially control our economic infrastructure. We have to do something to prevent that from happening. We have to fix that. We have to recognize that it's a potential threat to democracy. It's a potential threat to the world. So bringing manufacturing of devices like PLCs and ASIC, not ASIC, SCADA, I meant to say, those things, that's a very important step in securing our infrastructure and our elections also. So in-person voting, very important step towards making sure the right people, the people who are voted for are elected, and that the initiatives that are being voted for are understood. And the other thing I wanted to talk about, or that I talked about, was, of course, bringing the concept of progressive back to the Republican Party. If the Democratic Party wants to share in that, they really kind of have to change the way they're doing things to be, well, more progressive than regressive. So that's all I want to say. So once again, my name is Tom Timbrooks. I am running for the United States Representative seat, Congressional District 6 in Oregon on the Republican ticket. I appreciate your vote. If you have any questions at all for me, if you're watching this on YouTube, you see my email in the YouTube thing. If you're not watching this on YouTube, you're with the MCM, the public access cable. Well, just watch me on YouTube, okay? Because I do have a thing on YouTube. It just says Thomas W. Timbrooks for Congressional District 6, Oregon. That's me. That's where I'm at. So yeah, just go ahead and get on there. So yeah, thank you very much for your time, and I hope that you decide to vote for me. I'll bring everything I have into whatever needs to be done. Thank you very much.